And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
Donald Trump bragging to the crowd in front of a podium that he and his pal, Speaker Mike Johnson, have a secret, a plan for, quote, after the election. And given Mike Johnson and his Republican allies' track record, Liz Cheney calls him the architect of the legal plot behind the insurrection. When it comes to disrespecting the will of the American voters, it's raising alarm bells about the threat that may loom should Republicans in Congress hold any power come 2025.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here, and House Democrats are ringing the alarm bells with a theory that should shake us all. According to Representative Dan Goldman, Donald Trump says he and Speaker Mike Johnson have a secret plan to deal with the 2024 election if Trump loses.
Donald Trump hinted yesterday in his speech that he has some secret with Speaker Mike Johnson. And I suspect, we don't know, but I suspect Donald Trump's little secret plan with Mike Johnson is a backup plan for when he loses and he tries to go to the House of Representatives to throw out the Electoral College, the certification from the states, and have the House of Representatives under the leadership and the control and the gavel for Mike Johnson and try to overturn this election.
A secret plan. It sounds like the plot of a bad thriller, but sadly, this isn't fiction. And what they're hinting at, well, scarier than a horror film on Halloween, and it could lead us straight into a constitutional nightmare. If the Democrats win the House, it's not just Johnson's job that's at stake. Johnson could finally be held accountable for his role in the January 6th plan. And yes, you heard that right. Mike Johnson, current Speaker of the House, was allegedly a key architect in the framework that helped Donald Trump try to overturn the 2020 election. Now he's in the Speaker's chair, sitting in the very seat that could give Trump the leverage he needs if things don't go his way in 2024. If Mike Johnson is leading the House when the votes are counted, we could be looking at another January 6th scenario. Translation, if Johnson holds the gavel, he's got the power to influence how the electoral votes are counted. Imagine this horror show. This isn't just a man watching from the sidelines. This is the guy who may well have been the brains behind Trump's 2020 coup attempt, ready to take another swing at our democracy. But hold on. If you're thinking we're just being paranoid, let's look at what Liz Cheney had to say.
I do not have faith that Mike Johnson will fulfill his constitutional obligations. And if you just look at what he did in 2020, he knew with specificity that the claims of fraud that Donald Trump was making and that he was repeating, he knew those to be false. We had very clear and specific conversations about that. He knew that courts had specifically found that those claims were false. He has a record repeatedly of doing things that he knows to be wrong, that he knows to be unconstitutional in order to placate Donald Trump.
Cheney, one of the leading Republicans who served on the January 6th committee, is practically screaming from the rooftops about this guy. She said, and I quote, "I do not have faith that Mike Johnson will fulfill his constitutional obligations." Now, when Liz Cheney says that, we better pay attention. This isn't just some casual observation. This is a red alert. Cheney knows this guy's record. She's seen the documents. She's heard the testimonies. She's worked alongside Benny Thompson to investigate what happened that day. And she is not mincing words. She went further, too. Cheney reminded us that Johnson put his name on a Supreme Court brief that backed Donald Trump's baseless claims of a rigged election. Cheney's words, he signed his name to a brief filled with the United States Supreme Court that made those claims he knew to be false. Yeah, this is the man who knew full well that those fraud claims were bogus, yet he pushed them anyway. Why? To keep Trump happy. And now he's in the Speaker's chair, standing as the man who might just hand the election to Donald Trump if the results aren't favorable. It's like hiring the arsonist to run the fire department. So what happens if the GOP holds on to the House and Johnson keeps his gavel? Well, let's look at the nightmare scenario that no one wants to think about. Imagine it's January 2025. The votes are in. Trump loses and he's not happy. He starts yelling about fraud, conspiracy, the whole playbook we saw in 2020. Only this time he's got a friend in the House Speaker, a friend who's already showing that he's willing to twist the Constitution to fit Donald Trump's desires. Johnson could play a pivotal role in deciding how the electoral votes are counted. Remember, on January 6, 2021, Mike Pence was presiding and Nancy Pelosi held the Speaker's gavel. Now imagine that dynamic flipped. Johnson as Speaker, doing everything in his power to throw out electoral votes from states Trump's didn't win. And all the while, Trump's cheering him on, saying, "That's my guy." It's not democracy, it's a setup. Bringing it back to Cheney again, because her warnings just get more chilling, she stated that Johnson knew exactly what he was doing, that he knew the election fraud claims were lies, and yet he played along. She laid it out in black and white. He knew, and he knew with certain the claims that Donald Trump was making and that he was repeating. He knew those to be false. Let that sink in. This is the man second in line to the presidency. Cheney's not just talking about some minor transgression. She's saying he knowingly tried to overturn the will of millions of Americans. With warnings like these from both Torres and Cheney, the picture gets clearer and scarier. Torres sees Johnson as an active threat to democracy, especially if he keeps the Speaker's gavel through the 2024 election. And Cheney, she's already seen what he's capable of. And she says he has a record repeatedly of doing things that he knows to be wrong, that he knows to be unconstitutional in order to placate Donald Trump. It's enough to make you wonder, are we really just one election away from having our democracy hijacked by a man who thinks constitutional obligations are just suggestions? Here's the kicker, folks. This isn't just another political scuffle. This is a high-stakes game where the future of our democracy is on the line. If Americans let this slide, if Johnson and his little secret with Trump are allowed to play out unchecked, we could be walking into a dark, dangerous chapter in American history. This election isn't just about Democrats versus Republicans. It's about whether or not we still have a democracy in 2025. So the question is, do we really trust Mike Johnson? Do we have confidence in a man who, let's face it, was perfectly comfortable trying to throw out the last election results? Liz Cheney doesn't think so. Richard Torres doesn't think so. And honestly, after looking at the facts, anyone who values the future of this country should be skeptical as well. As we head into 2024 election, it's time to wake up. This isn't just about who's in the White House. It's about who's controlling Congress, who's holding the gavel, and who's ready to play fast and loose with the Constitution if things don't go their way. Stay informed, stay engaged, and make your voice heard. Because if we don't, we might just wake up and find a secret plan Trump hinted at wasn't so secret after all. And by then, it may be too late to do anything about it. And that's a fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.